Hello and welcome to my thoughts on My Little Pony, the movie, the prequel. God, I love saying that. If you haven't read it yet, you can click here and I'll read it for you. Alright, everyone ready? Let's go. So, when I first looked into doing these, back when I decided to read through the movie comic, I really didn't want to read these. But then I read through the movie and I was like, you know what? That Storm King, he's a cool guy. And thus the greatest decision of my life was made. I had so much fun working on these videos. I have literally zero clue what the actual Storm King's like, but I sure had a good time with my direction of him. He's just so well written. I've never enjoyed a character more. He's great. I really do think this is my favorite set of comics I've read yet. Was not expecting that going into this. So, our story starts off with an amazing intro. It's so dark and threatening and mysterious, and I'm just like, yes, tell me more. And then the funny monkey man appears, putting hats on his little monkey soldiers, talking to his best friend Cloud Guy. Ah, what a treat. I will never call them storm creatures. He will forever be my funny monkey man. Our story starts off with the Storm King doing his thing, conquering nations and raining havoc. So while the Storm King's invading Abyssinia, we set up our little capper side plot thing. It's really not important. I don't know why it exists. But anyway, the Storm King pays a visit to everyone's favorite character, Cat, who immediately gives up his kingdom like a bitch. And I gotta say, the Storm King must have some strong and dexterous hands to just mold that crown into a perfect ring. The Misfortune Malachite is an interesting plot device. Like, although ultimately it serves no purpose, it does a very good job at weaving these stories together. In each of the stories, except for Solano's, I guess Miss Pirate Lady's like too good for treasure or something, it just is the single driving force for each of the main characters. It's the reason the Storm King travels halfway across the world. It's the reason Capper gets involved with Verco, that's his name. And it's the reason Tempest gets involved with the Storm King. The character of Strife is a pretty good plot device. While his own character is pretty much non-existent, he does do a good job at fleshing out the Storm King's character through their conversations with each other. So, a bit of a missed opportunity. In the moment of Strife's betrayal, it greatly affects the Storm King. A brief moment of shock, followed by unbridled fury for the rest of the issue. But once he kills Strife, it just kind of is like, I don't care anymore. And just immediately tries to replace it with any schmuck off the street? I'm not. Yes, I am calling Solano and Tempest a schmuck, apparently. Why did I even say that word? I don't think I've said it before in my life. I don't know. I just kind of wish there was some sign of resentment towards his previous commander while he was recruiting new commanders. Does that make sense? I don't know if it makes sense. Speaking of recruiting new commanders, so he's like a super bad dictator tyrant guy, right? He doesn't really act like one. Like, he doesn't really threaten or bully anyone around him. He's kind of respectful. I guess it's kind of like, instead of threatening people around him to fall in line, he just expects them to fall in line out of, like, arrogance and ego or something. Which is an interesting take. You know, until Solano, like, interferes with recapturing his ship. And sure, burning down Abyssinia, dick move. But hey, in war, sometimes you just gotta raise a city, am I right? But otherwise, you know, he's pretty chill.
Oh, your majesties, I hope you don't mind me coming in. Oh, Captain, the way you pillaged my ships. Marvelous.
It's a shame he doesn't have, like, better characterization. Tempest too, at least she has a motive, but they're both pretty shallow. But I mean, that's the movie's fault, not the comic's fault. I don't blame them. I really enjoy that Part 1 and Part 2 are basically the same story, but told from different perspectives. That's pretty neat. I don't think that's really happened before in the comics, so cool. I'm completely off track. Let's just go into Part 3. Oh my god, I hate Part 3. I mean, okay, I don't hate it, but it's a A very discernible downgrade from the other 3 parts. And it's sad. It's really cool that it's like in the background getting set up in part 1 and part 2. You know, I don't mind that. I just feel like with the current story that they told for part 3, it was completely pointless. It didn't have anything to do with the Storm King. It didn't really explain much of anything about Capper. Woof, woof, woof. Thanks, doggies. It ended almost exactly how it began. I mean, wow. It explains why Capper's in Cluj Town and why he's indebted to Virgo, but, I guess they couldn't think of a real story to tell. So they made Chummer suddenly go crazy for literally no reason at all. Capper literally says, I just want to be with you forever. And then Chummer, whatever reason, that means, you're going to leave me. And then Capper just gets Mufasa. Like, what? Just when I look at part 3 and then look at the other 3 parts, and it's just like, if you really couldn't think of a story to tell with Capper, you could have just talked about the hippogriffs. That could have been a thing. At least that involves the Storm King. You know, for the story that's about the Storm King. But if we didn't get this whole Capper story, how would we know he crashed in Cluj Town and why he's indebted to Virgo? Well, it's like, Tempest was in Cluj Town, and, in part 1 and part 2, Capper just kind of progressed his story in the backgrounds of the other characters' stories. So really, he could have just been in the background Tempest story, and it's like, oh, we could literally see the beginning of Tempest that the airship crashed. Wow, what a shocker. Who would have thought? We needed the whole story to tell that. But the real mean is, Capper's story begins with an airship crash. So did it really need to end with an airship crash just to transition to Tempest? No, because it only shows one airship crash. Lol, get wrecked, idiots. Sorry, I'm aggressive right now. And even the way Capper's personality is shown doesn't really match his movie counterpart. I don't see how point A got to point B. Convince me otherwise. I think that's all I have to say about Capper's story. Let's move on to part 4. I really like the opening of part 4. Her calm, mysterious internal monologue. Ah, so good. And then she stumbles upon Chummer's broken airship, a perfect symbol of part 3. And by fate, it's her turn to handle the misfortune Malachite. A very straight-to-the-point setup. And then bam! Storm King guys come. And aw, little hedgehog boy's in charge. Just like he deserves. His name was said once in the movie, right? I have completely forgotten it. I don't really know why I call him a hedgehog. I just look at him and it's like, that's Sonic. Tempest handles herself pretty well. I mean, kind of well. It's a mixture between her doing well and the others being incompetent. So from the reader's point of view, it's so weird to see creatures who literally don't know anything about magic. Horse magic, I guess. They say they're out searching for magic, but I mean, it's just in the form of, like, relics. Apparently they don't know what to do about creatures who possess magic. It's just weird that they can't tell, like, that this clearly is not how it's supposed to work. It's just flopping to the ground. It's like, ah, yes, threatening. So something I noticed with Tempest is the way she portrays herself. Throughout the desert, throughout Cluj Town, and even with the conflict with Hedgehog Boy, she stays pretty cool and calm. And as we see in Cluj Town, she doesn't choose to interact with any other creatures. She only does if they interact with her, i.e. Hedgehog Boy and this vendor, and in which she's very adversarial. But then, along comes Rambler, and she does not know what to do about it. It's almost as if she's using a facade, and then all of a sudden the presence of another pony shatters it. She doesn't really know what to say to him. She kind of stammers, I'm fine. And it's weird, right? I mean, she doesn't have to be nice to him or even talk to him at all. And yet she willingly does and kind of ends up oversharing her life story. It comes off as she's yearning for interaction, but in this non-equestrial world, she can't find any, and thus she's grown accustomed to ignoring everyone and being adversarial. And it just adds to her character really nicely without contradicting what we already know about her. Unlike Capper, whose dialogue makes him feel very different from the Capper we meet in the movie. I mean, I haven't watched the movie yet, so I guess I really don't know what I'm talking about, kind of. So I guess keep that in mind. Anyway, Tempest is cute? Was that where I was going with that point? I don't know. Anyway, finally, the big monkey man shows up, and Tempest once again loses her composure, but only for a moment. I wonder what Tempest told Rambler. I mean, he has to know he's the bait, right? How could he not know? So, like, in a way,
I don't feel like she betrayed him or anything. I felt like it feels like he knew what he was getting into. And the Storm King's like, why didn't you just ask him to help?
and it's like, I don't know, it kind of feels like that's exactly what she did. But I mean, I don't care. Just listening to all the words come out of his mouth, I just can't.
Not gonna finish that sentence. I don't know why that was going there.
I really do think that this part is the best of all 4 issues. Just the Storm King and Tempest talking with each other. And I mean, I know there's nothing crazy plot-wise going on in any of these comics, but I mean, that's fine. Their purpose is to just add extra characterization to enrich the movie, right? And they do such a damn good job at that. Like, even though I hate the Capra story, it's not because it's just the story itself, not the characterization attempt is partly the characterization, but only because it doesn't feel like it's Capra. I don't know what I'm talking about.
I'm not an English professor. I can't tell you the socio-economical meaning of building a snowman with mud. Find someone else to review literature. I'm sorry.
Alright, long story short, really good writing. I loved spending time with these characters. So much enriching dialogue. Where's the hippogriffs? Strife's cool. He does a good job contrasting the Storm King and Solano. He's just a very good plot device in general. The Misfortune Malachite is definitely a worse plot device than Strife, but it does its job. Those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and until next time.